we're back. Men's Couch is back. We're here, huh?
You.
Oh yeah, we're here to talk. We're here to talk about addiction, and we're just here to discuss. Today we have
Angie.
Miller.
And Nathan.
and Micah, and we're here to talk about addiction. Now, I think when people think about addiction, they think about only like using substances, but addiction can be like any like behavior that can be like problematic, and at least that's my definition. So I guess like my like first thing is what do we think like is a definition of like addiction?
I would say anything that you have a dependency on, and it can be, a substance, a person, media, social media. Like, there's so many. I was going to say it can be good or bad. Like, if you're addicted to a person, that could be all right. Like, if you form, like, a healthy and you're aware of that addiction, and then, like, you can really express your passion and love for a person. But, like, you really, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I would say to me, addiction is more so like what he said, where you have a dependency on something. But I would say addiction is more negative, to where it would like hinder your everyday functions and cause your overall quality of life to be less than what it could be.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that was said. I also think that it could be something that keeps you in a constant cycle, something that you have no control over, because obviously when you're addicted to something, you rarely ever, like, once you're in it and once you're hooked on it, it's very hard for you to have a say on how to break away from it. It's very, very hard. So I think anything that you don't have control over and that keeps you in a constant cycle and you can't break, that's an addiction. So
Yeah. And I was talking to my my psych professor about the addictions that we normalize, like maybe like caffeine or coffee.
Yes.
And like shopping or
The gym.
My addiction is workaholism. That's my addiction. And addiction to like achievement, because I've always been like kind of an achievement based person, and it took like a while for me to like be a human being instead of like a human doing. So I was like addicted to that, and that's kind of like my like history with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I will also say one more thing about like a definition, kind of from a Christian standpoint. It's just like addiction is kind of like idolizing something.
Yeah.
And I talked about this at Jubilee with a man named Timotheus Pope, and I was worried about idolizing the gym because I'm in there a lot, it's become like a big part of me. And he said, well, as long as you don't take God out of it, then you can't idolize it. So I was like, okay, awesome. So just like pray before. And he was like, yeah, pray before, during, after. Like no matter what, you can always pray. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think for me, I've used my addictions more as, well, I didn't know it at the time, but it was more as a way to like escape from myself in a way, if that makes sense, to escape from like from who I was, or just, I don't know, just from my life, because I felt like I needed to like use this to like workaholism, to, because you don't like I feel like when you're in it, you don't realize that you don't have to be that way, and I had that because I thought that I needed to have like my expectations about, well, in regards to like classwork, I thought it was just like I always needed to be working on it. So that kind of created that addiction where I was like when I got like the praise, it was like, oh, this is like validating. Not to say that that's bad, but like it kind of creates that like cycle.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how did you go about bettering that?
I talked to my therapist. I talked to my therapist, and so the reason why I, like, she kind of like understood the reason why I like had that, and it's mostly because, kind of like I said before, but also it's more of like I put pressure on myself, like kind of like a perfectionism thing, and it can like um even like other addictions, I feel like the root causes might be a little similar. Like even like I don't know about the addiction to the gym. I don't know. But maybe like other I don't know, other addictions. You said you're the expert, so I'm gonna leave that out to you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What
Like
was
you can
your question again, or what
so
you
like
said?
what I'm saying, it's like what my therapist said is that for me, because I put a lot of pressure on myself, that's why I went to the workaholism and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, at least for me, when it came to addiction, is a lot of times people will go to that for an escape from something.
Yeah, it was
whether,
like an escape. Yeah.
Yeah, whether they even realize that they're trying to avoid or escape something or not. And a lot of
Mhm.
times people don't realize that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
moment they get into something, whether it is
Yeah.
a drug or something like what you said, just an activity of like being a workaholic,
Mhm.
they feel that what they were avoiding, whether it's anxiety, depression, or something else, is gone. And so they latch on to that subconsciously and will keep doing it to feel better, when in reality it's just avoiding the problems that are still there and therefore
Mhm.
making it worse without realizing it.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of like said it for me, because yeah, it's basically, I kind of, well, there's like, that's one of the reasons that I kind of had that problem, but, yeah, like kind of like having that anxiety for me, it's like anxiety of not being enough, so then you go to that to like, to make sure that you feel that way. So
Yeah.
I think like addiction, and you mentioned like addiction to people, I think we can I think we can get addicted to people, but I don't want to say that that's like good, because I feel like that's like more of like along the lines of like codependency, and you get like addicted to the person, that you're like using the person to like relying on that person. um yeah, you're like relying on someone. Not to say that like relying on someone like in a healthy way, like healthy like interdependence, depending on someone to like as a support, but like I'm talking about like I like needing this needing this person, and like kind of like an obsession kind of. If
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of trying to take it to like with being a workaholic, like that can
Yeah.
be a good thing if you
Yeah.
recognize like when to work and like when to relax, and like if you know where to put your work into.
Yeah,
Kinda
like
cut off.
creating a balance between it.
Yeah, the
and-
balance.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So for me, yeah, having like a good work ethic is good, and that's like the other side of it. But then it gets to a point where you feel like if you're not working, then you're being lazy, and then you like overwork yourself, and that's kind of yeah. But I was excited that you wanted to talk about it, because you're like I keep saying like you're like an expert on it.
Yeah.
So do like yeah, I kind of wanted like to let you.
Yeah, so
Good.
I do have a lot of personal experience with addiction myself, actually, because for a long time, whenever I was in high school, I had a rather serious problem with marijuana, and I did it for 2 years, the first year was off and on, and then the second year was pretty much consecutive, like constant, was when it really became a problem. But I remember it was totally destroying myself, and it took me a very long time to realize that it was a problem. And a lot of the things with addiction is that people don't realize what they're doing is a problem and how much it's truly destroying them, usually until they have to figure that out themselves. Because I know for me, people told me, like, this is getting out of hand, look what you're doing. And it wasn't enough until I personally hit rock bottom and realized, okay, it's either I continue doing this or I totally screw my life up. And it was that moment that I decided, okay, I need to quit and like get control of myself, which at this point I've been off of it since November, so a few months at this point. But getting off of it was the hardest thing, and I remember looking back on it throughout the whole thing, I was totally lost with myself, and at the time I didn't realize truly why I was doing it. It just, the feeling of it made me feel better, and I was able to have a calmer mind. But what I was doing was trying to escape from the anxiety and everything that I had in constant racing thoughts. That was the only thing that would stop that for me. So I easily got hooked onto it. And I remember the first time doing it, remembering how amazing it felt that was finally gone with my brain. I was able to not be all over the place. I felt like I could, I don't want to say concentrate, but like, I guess like a sense of peace in my brain. And it's that sense of peace that I got that I latched on to, and it just became more and more. The more I did it, the more I wanted it. And then of course with drugs, your tolerance goes up, so you end up needing more of it. And it got to the point where I was going through so much of it on like each week. I was doing it constantly. And another thing as well is how expensive that is, just throwing hundreds of dollars. I probably spent over $1,000 on it, and just wasting money and not caring about it because that's all that you need. And I remember as well in the moments when I would run out, it's like my world was totally shaken if I couldn't get it in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And it was terrible, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but the overall experience of it was, I was just lost with myself, I would say. And then getting off of it, when I finally hit rock bottom and realized that like I needed to stop, and for that, what brought me to that was I realized it got to the point where I was pushing everyone away, avoiding people so I could just use that instead. And my grades were falling, everything else was just collapsing on itself with my life. And I remember realizing, like, there's no way for me to be successful and do that at the same time. So I had to make a choice. It's either the marijuana or be successful in life. And I decided to go and be successful in life. And at first, I remember when I did try to stop, it was scary because the physical withdrawal that I had was really bad. I would get heart palpitations, panic attacks, all those things, and I was worried I would have a heart attack. And so the first few times after trying to quit, I would go back to it because I'm like, I'm going to die if I don't have this. So I tried weaning off of it and just cutting down my use. And I did that for a few days until I felt confident enough to where I could completely stop. And within, I think it was 5 days, I decided to completely stop doing it after doing a little bit of weaning off. And it was still very hard, but I didn't have as much of a reaction as well. And even though it was physical, I think there was a lot as well with my mindset, just feeling that I still needed that caused all that.
Yeah.
And so after weaning off of it and not feeling the need to have it as much, I think that made it a little bit easier to just quit cold turkey with it. And then I remember as well, I still had a lot of problems for like 2 weeks after was most of the physical stuff, where I was feeling a lot of anxiety, had a hard time just talking to people. And another thing that I found was interesting was eating was very difficult.
Yes.
Because since I had always like done marijuana and then ate, the thing with that is it makes you hungry. So therefore, it would feel like I needed that in order to be hungry. And my body didn't want to eat food without it. And I remember having to force myself to eat, because if I didn't, I would lose weight and not be healthy. And I remember I did lose weight through that. It ended up being 10 pounds, but after 2 weeks, I was able to get my appetite back and eat normally again. That's pretty much the gist of it. And there's still, of course, the psychological aspect after withdrawal. For like a month, I still had urges, and those urges never went away. There's still days I wake up and it's like, I want that, but I have to recognize that that's not what I need, and it's just my mind. It's essentially an intrusive thought, and I just have to ignore it and move on with my day.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing, because I know that's like, I know you wanted to share that. So
Yeah, it is a lot, but
yeah. And I think the way that we think about people with addiction, or just in general, we look at them kind of maybe looking at it through like a shame way, like, oh, look at that person with their addiction. And with that story, like sharing your story kind of allows other people to understand like the things behind the addiction instead of like the behavior itself. So you kind of like, you're able to understand the person better, and you're able to understand the addiction. It's not just about like just the behavior. It's like all the anxieties and all the stuff that's like behind it. So
Yeah, I had a very similar experience with weed. Mine didn't start in high school. How old were you when you started smoking?
I first did it my junior year, so I think it was about when I was 16, I think.
Yeah, I've seen like when you start younger, my younger brothers also started in high school, and I just see how much more you latch onto it at a younger age. And it's like, I mean, it's hard to say addicted, because you don't really actually get addicted to marijuana, but you get addicted to the feeling and that like sense of peace that you experience with it. And so for me, I just did not know how to get that same level of peace without it. And then I finally got into my faith more, started believing in Jesus, believing in myself. And I was like, all right, I don't, like you said, I didn't really have that same either you succeed or you fail, because so many people around me like used marijuana medicinally, and I saw like they were succeeding while smoking, and I was like, well, I can do that too. And so it was really hard for me to be like, no, like I'm not going to smoke anymore. And also I'm sure like you had a support group around you who also smoked.
Yeah,
I
did.
And that's like, oh, it's so hard to break away when your friends are doing it, and then like you say you're not going to do it, and they're like, okay, yeah, good for you. But then like, as soon as you get back in that environment and they're lighting up and they're like, yo, you want to take a hit? And you're just like, I mean,
I guess it's also
why not?
Maybe it's like that community aspect. Like you found like
enablers.
you said, Yeah, like but still like a support in general, because or with any activity, you kind of see the community like, okay, these people are doing it. So, and you have the natural desire to belong,
Yes.
but obviously addiction is not the way to like go about it. And
Yeah.
it's just the desire is good. We need to like focus on that desire to belong, and I think that's where like maybe addiction comes up, is we have like these these natural desires, whether it be to have peace, to belong, to feel good about life, but the addiction, I feel like we're going about addiction as looking at it as a way to get that, but initially we don't know that is not how we should get it.
Yeah.
You've been kind of quiet.
I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about like addiction, like drug addiction.
Yeah.
And there's often like a stigma when it comes to drug addiction or
I feel like there's a
anything like
stigma.
that. But I know that everyone in certain points of their life are addicted to anything.
Mm-hmm.
It just, people have different types of addictions. And I think that there shouldn't be such a stigma around wanting to talk about them.
Yeah.
I think that the issue is more so looking at what's behind the addiction, like the psychological aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I feel like most people who are addicted to anything, it's
Don't
not
just
because,
wake up.
oh, like I just want, like,
That's
yeah.
ridiculous.
There's usually an underlying factor as to what's going behind that influences them to want to, do drugs or do any of that to kind of silence everything else that's going on as a coping mechanism. Like I know that you've talked about like the academic aspect.
So for me, and
Okay.
a word came up. I was like listening to another podcast, and the episode was like, okay, busyness junkies. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a busyness junkie, because you said you were a junkie before. It was funny, but I think and for whatever reason, there seems to be like an addiction hierarchy. Like, okay, this is like coffee. It's just so normal, and then it's just like this is like marijuana or something, and it seemed like, or heroin. It seems so. Like I feel like we all have.
It's weird.
We all have.
It's
like addictive behaviors or addictions.
Yeah.
That to better understand this behavior isn't like, oh my gosh, I screwed up again, or why did I do this? It's not that. It's like, well, what am I trying to look for? Kind of like, what am I looking for in this?
Mm-hmm. Kind of going to the addiction hierarchy, I find it interesting how like you see like heroin and things are like at the lowest.
Yeah.
And then I have that same problem that you've talked about, like being workaholic, caring about academics too much.
Yeah.
And that's often like when I talk to people about it, they're like, oh, well, that's a good addiction. Like that's a good thing. And I'm like, that's not a good thing.
It's
because
painful.
It's just something that you don't have control over. Like you just have that desire to always like be the best at everything you do.
Yeah.
But it's like unhealthy, because once you have a certain kind of success, it's like that's not good enough, and then you need more, and then when you have that, you need more, and then you need more, and then you need more, and you're never satisfied. So it's an addiction that's just unhealthy, and it often dictates like the way you go about your life. You just, I don't know, you probably spend more time on the things that you want to do for yourself rather than taking time to spend with your friends or your family, because you have such an addiction over this ideal success that it takes control of your life. So I think that there shouldn't be a hierarchy on like addiction. I think all addiction is, I think all addiction is not, there is no good, I feel like there's no good addiction. Like, because nothing in excess is good.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it caused a lot of burnout for me, because I think what that did for me is it kind of said to like the outside world is I am on top of things, but it said that to like the outside world, and so we kind of get addicted to the image of what a perfectionist when we get like addicted to like all those achievements, and it's a way. I feel like it's a way, like we talked about yesterday, is a way to avoid our humanity in a sense. And I kind of talked to you a little bit about this as well. Is like the emotional aspect of
Yeah.
feeling all these emotions like anxiety or whatever, and using that like addiction to like kind of like help with that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say, too, a lot of people turn to that to help with it, but in reality, when you are addicted to something, it's more often than not just hiding the problem that is still there.
Mhm.
Because I know for me, I was hiding anxiety and other things, and then any moment I would be off of marijuana or I would try to quit, it would just come back full force. And I honestly think after the fact, my anxiety ended up just being worse because of it, because I wasn't dealing with it head on. And after having done that for so long, it's almost like I forgot how to deal with it, so it ended up being worse in the end. Yeah.
So, my like $1 million question is, how can we better support someone with addiction? How can we like kind of better understand their story? Does it start with us understanding like our own behaviors first, or do we need to like, yeah, like how does that like what has helped? What has helped like as far as like support wise?
I think it all starts with recognition.
Yeah.
From really, it has to start with the person with the addiction, recognizing it, and then just trusting enough to reach out, like, and because you can only learn about the addiction if you talk to another person about it and really dive into what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm.
So for the support system, it's all about just listening. Like, you don't even have to provide any advice. Just be like, literally ask the question why.
Yeah.
And like just over and over, like, okay, so you are smoking weed. Well, why are you smoking? Oh, you have racing thoughts, you have anxiety, you can't go to sleep. Well, what's the root cause of that? Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just like, it's like that, it all stems from something. And once you find what the weed is, then you can just pull it out and
You're, like, able to help them.
Yeah.
Because you can deal with the racing thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so the real problem is how can we deal with the racing thoughts? Like, how can I help you with that? And that's like the real problem. And I think with that is not shaming a person, which I think is I don't know. I just heard from people about how they've been shamed about having these like particular struggles, and it just made things worse. Like that shame, that sense of shame that's
what happened to me with my parents. Really, I felt so just bad about smoking, and then I would smoke in their house and they hated that. Mm-hmm. And so they would be like, Miller, we can't have this, like, you're ruining your life, this, that, and the other. And I was just like, well, like, what do I do? Like, I went to therapy, like, it just was whatever.
Yeah.
Talked about it, but it really didn't reach any root cause.
Yeah.
And then so they would shame me, make me feel even worse, and my only coping mechanism was to go back to smoking.
It reinforces the addiction.
Yeah. So it's like, and I can't blame them because they didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So it just is a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And really, the only way that I got out of it is just having faith in myself and in a higher power.
Yeah.
Like, that was the most powerful thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up religious at all. Like, my parents really, they just taught us to be good people, to rely on the family. They're always there for us. But it's like, all right, are you really there for me if I'm smoking weed? Like, it didn't feel that way.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
that, like what we talked about yesterday, like that like conditional like foundation that we all need to get
Yeah.
to that conditional that unconditional support that we all need when going through like something like an addiction or just some like rough patch is and I think that's where I feel like we don't recognize like how shame does affect that, because shame causes us like to hide, and it causes us to, it just reinforces it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, because we're not living up to like the expectations of other people that they have on us, like maybe not just your parents, or like maybe the way people like see you, it can cause like more shame, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know too with my parents, whenever I did it, they had no idea that that was going on, and they still don't know that that happened. So I was too afraid to tell them because I knew the reaction would be bad, because they have told me before, like, oh, never do drugs, it's terrible. And it was, my mom also works at a police station, so she's very strict with things like that. So I was too afraid to like try and reach out for any sort of help as well. So I felt very alone in the whole matter and didn't know who to really talk to when I was going through that.
It's really about having a safe meaning like they might not go through the same thing that you do, but they're able to like hold that space for you, to have you to listen to you, like you said before, like listen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like listening is super important in those cases. So
And just to know that someone loves you through the addiction,
yeah,
it's so powerful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I think like part of like being able to reach out for help when you're struggling with addiction is finding people who like can recognize like getting off their moral high horse.
Yeah.
Because when as someone who grew up like religious and in a church, I don't like the term religious. I like the term relationship.
I don't like the term
Yeah.
religious at all.
But I guess technically it falls under that. But growing up like in the church and stuff, you often see like, especially like old fashioned, where it's like a person would have an addiction and then they would have enough like confidence to reach out for help and the ministry, and they would get shamed for it, and it was like, and instead of like supporting and being part of the restoration process, they would like completely finish destroying the person, and that would lead them to go into shame and like kind of like, I don't know, be drived away from God, and just be drived away from building enough trust and social connection with another individual to be able to reach out. So I think there's a huge importance with like getting off your moral high horse and just listening to a person, and also being humble enough to recognize that even though you may not have like that same addiction, you've likely have an addiction too, or you've struggled with an addiction, and addiction doesn't look the same to everyone. But we all struggle with that during many points of our lives. During at least one point of our life, we have that. So yeah, I think just being humble enough to listen to other people, because that, if you're not, it creates shame within another person. And I don't know, I think shame is even kind of the root factor to many addictions.
I think shame is
because it's
the root
shame
of it.
like to what, to you go to an addiction, you look to that, and you go into that because you're ashamed of feeling what you want to feel, your emotions. It's too much, you feel shame in that, so you turn to an addiction, you turn to a drug, you turn to a substance, you turn to a person, you turn to workaholism, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like
you turn to something because you feel shame
of not being good enough, or about
or feeling what you need to feel.
Yeah.
So the shame, I feel like shame is the root of all of it.
Yeah, we need to talk shame on that episode.
Yeah.
But so you feel shame over your humanity, about being human, because maybe you were never allowed to experience like those emotions, or it was just you grew up in a culture that it was shamed of having certain emotions, so you go to that addiction because it's just you feel every time the emotion comes up, you feel shame, and you don't want to feel that shame on top of the emotion.
And it's difficult because if a person is reaching out for help, they know what they're doing is wrong. Like, you don't need to bang them over the head.
Yeah, like they're already aware of
like,
it.
they know it's wrong, and they're trying to fix it. So
yeah,
be part of the restoration process and don't destroy a person. Just
I've been thinking about, like, are humans, like, is there a human who's more prone than another human to addiction? Like, they say that alcoholism is genetic and that you can be more prone to alcoholism. But it's like it seems like all humans are just prone to it. And if you're shamed, then it's like
10 times like worse.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I know that it's interesting being like into psychology and then also being like a faith. It's interesting to see like the contradicting theories between like what psychology tells you versus what like the Bible tells you. And often you see that psychology is like, oh, well, this is genetic and this is this, but really I feel like every single one of us has a point in our lives where we are like, we have an addiction, and maybe we can live our lives not having certain addictions, like certain types of addictions, but we all at least have an addiction to something. So I don't know. I feel like that genetic thing, maybe not everyone in their life turns to alcohol, but they turn to something.
Yeah.
We all turn to something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like we all have addictions.
Right?
Yeah,
So.
and the purpose of like this is to like kind of, and I guess when I first started like the podcast, one of the reasons is I want us to know that we're not the only ones having something, and I think we like maybe just go through our lives, especially as men, we feel very like we're the only one with the problem, and I think like our talk yesterday.
Yeah.
I feel like when we did that, it was so that I want you to know that you're not like the only person like having problems. So I think it's important to it's important to, as a way to like combat that shame, is vulnerability, like we said yesterday, and which it can be hard, it can be like uncomfortable, but I think it's worth it.
Definitely.
So that we can like, we can know that we're not like the only person, and I think knowing that like alone, knowing that you're like not the only person, I think it definitely helps like just with addiction in general.
And another thing, like, we have to know that it's not our fault that we are addicted. I mean, in our society, like now, marijuana is
Actually,
just
I'm
so
glad that
normalized.
you said that, because I don't know, I'm always like, anytime I have a problem, I'm always like assuming that I don't know, it's my fault, but
Yes.
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. There's always a reason, and most of the time, the reason is rooted in our society.
Yeah.
And not really in who we are. I mean, that's like why I bring up like people being more prone to addiction, because my grandfather was an alcoholic, and so my whole life, like, I've been thinking, well, I'm prone to alcoholism, I had like a little stint with drinking that was really bad, but I never really felt addicted to alcohol. But then I went into therapy, and the first thing my therapist said when I told her my story, she was just like, well, Miller, you are an alcoholic. And I was just like, I was literally not even like 20. I was like 19 years old.
The therapist said that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, some people, just to get this out of the way, there are not so good experiences with therapy. I know we all try to, luckily I have never had like a bad experience with therapy, but there are you can have like those experiences where, it just, this is kind of getting off topic, where it kind of can, I guess, sometimes make the problem worse because maybe the therapist doesn't like understand. But go ahead, yeah. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, and just back to the society, like in college, it's so normalized to just party, drink. Binge drinking is huge.
Yeah.
And I got into that, like drinking on the weekends. And I can say with certainty, like I could see how I was prone to alcoholism. Like I was blacking out like every time I drank, and just
maybe like the tendency towards that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But is that like really rooted in my genetics, or is that
I think there's a lot of, and this is like this like psychology in me coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of factors, and what we kind of have in psychology is a diathesis stress model where it's genetic and it's also based on some environmental factors.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more like
And
nature versus nurture.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that makes sense.
I think it's
Yeah.
both. Like some people can have the tendency toward that, whereas when they're surrounded, like if they're like in an environment, maybe they're like super stressed, going through trauma, or even just like the people around them do it, all of that stuff like leads that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so for me with drinking, it was like I had to think about if I could like ever drink again at a very young age, like 19, 20. I was thinking, well, can I even like drink at all?
Mm-hmm.
And that was tough for me, especially when all my friends were drinking and like it was just so normalized in my life.
Yeah.
And I already had to think like, am I like, if I keep this up, am I going to be like a functioning alcoholic where I can just drink and drink and drink?
Yeah.
But I could obviously tell like something was not normal. Like I was drinking so much, and I could tell like not everyone around me was doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously it's, like you said, like there's some of the environment. I was going through stress.
Yeah.
But then the fact that I was able to like drink that much, like I'm not that big of a guy, but like there has to be some kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. That's why with the whole thinking it's your fault, we go to, so we think it's our fault because of the shame. Like shame just like kind of tells us that it's our fault. So we try to fix things, but really what we need is that grounded compassion and love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it starts.
And also like having a good environment, like not like a good environment to be able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because I think I said something yesterday about ego. I think ego also plays into addiction. Because sometimes, especially if it's like an addiction that you have hidden or something that people probably don't know about, and you recognize that it's finally time for you to open up and find a solution and try to restore yourself. You can often feel like an ego part of you like saying, no, like I don't need to admit to anything, like I'm fine, like I don't need to let anyone know, because they think that I'm doing great and I'll let them do that. Because you don't want them to see you as someone who's that like probably broken in the moment, or somebody who has something that they want to fix or improve or reach out for help.
Because it's about like seeing yourself as a human, and you can't like see yourself in that in that human way because of that. Especially
if you're someone who doesn't like asking for help, that it feels like a sting to your ego when you have to seek for help.
I have problems asking for help. I don't know about anyone else, but I do. But I kind of actually I do need to go somewhere at 7, so all
right, let me say one more thing.
Wait, I didn't even like. Yeah, keep going. Cause
so,
I didn't even, like.
The actual aspect of addiction is bad, but oftentimes when we beat the addiction, we are strengthened so much. And so if we just view it as that, as a opportunity to strengthen ourselves and really just get better, like be vulnerable with a person, allow yourself to open up and just feel that love. I mean, it takes a lot, definitely. But it's definitely an opportunity to strengthen and just bond with others.
Yeah, it's kind of like seeing, because I guess we see like the addiction as like maybe like a burden or a crutch, but like seeing it as an opportunity, like
Yeah.
it like changes your mind about
Right?
it. Yeah.
Like, there has to be a reason. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And once you figure out that reason,
Yeah. Help you grow.
help you grow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other closing things? Okay. Yeah, so I think just I'm glad that you guys came on the podcast today. I think with this, I'm glad that we're able to talk about it, because I think it's one of those subjects that can be that has a lot of stigma, and I think moving forward, I think what do I want to say? Yeah, I'm glad that we're here to support each other,
Mhm.
and that's like the goal of the podcast.
Yes.
We'll be back on next week.
Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.